Classic Doctor Who started in 1963 with an unearthly child, and had a total of 42 episodes over 8 stories for Season 1. Those stories are An Unearthly Child, The Daleks, The Edge of Destruction, Marco Polo, The Keys of Marinus, The Aztecs, The Sensorites, and The Reign of Terror. William Hartnell was the first Doctor, and I love him. Right now he is my favorite classic Doctor. Over all of his stories, he has a lot of character development. He starts out as this grumpy man. After a while, he becomes nicer and attached to his companions, and that starts with Ian and Barbara. Susan, Ian, and Barbara are the companions this season, and I love this TARDIS team. They all have great moments together, and Ian and Barbara are some of my favorite companions. I think this is the first Doctor's best season because I don't hate any of the stories in this season, while in Season 2 and 3 there might be stories I like more, but there are also stories I like less. The first story in this season is An Unearthly Child, and it's 4 episodes. The first episode is great, but the 3 after aren't as good. In the first episode, we get to meet the characters. Ian is a science teacher and Barbara is a history teacher. And originally, the show was supposed to be a more educational show. And when they went to the past, it was supposed to teach you about history. And when they went into the future, it would teach you about science. But later, they kind of stray away from that a little. Ian and Barbara follow Susan to a junkyard, and there we see the TARDIS and meet the Doctor. We don't know much about the Doctor. All we see at this point is an old grumpy man. And Ian and Barbara go into the TARDIS, and the Doctor doesn't want them there. And then the TARDIS takes off, and we get a good cliffhanger of a shadow of someone. Now this is a good first episode for the whole series, and like I said, the other 3 episodes of the story aren't as good. The other 3 episodes are about cavemen, and one of them is trying to make fire, and their group gets captured, and they have to escape, and we learn that this Doctor is very different from the Doctor we have nowadays, because he tries to bash one of the cavemen's head in. By the end of it, they escape to the TARDIS and take off again. And the Doctor can't control where the TARDIS goes, so they never know where they're going to land. But overall, these other 3 episodes are alright. The next story is The Daleks, and this, of course, is the introduction to the Daleks. It's 7 episodes, and it's a good introduction to the Daleks. I think it might be a little too long, but that's usually the case for most of these classic stories. So, it starts with the TARDIS landing on Skaro, and they meet the Daleks and the Thals. The Thals don't want to fight the Daleks, but our group convinces them to fight, and it ends with the Daleks' power supply being cut off and the Daleks dying. The Daleks are a little different than they are now. They can't leave the city, and we see them paralyze Ian, which we really don't see them do that anymore. There's a cool moment when they try to escape by taking a Dalek out of the metal casing and putting Ian inside, and we could kind of see what a Dalek actually looks like, but not fully. So overall, this is a decent story, but not my favorite. Next, we got The Edge of Destruction, which is only 2 episodes, and that's nice. A lot of weird stuff happens in the story. Everyone starts acting strangely after there is a small explosion. It only takes place in the TARDIS, and weird things happen, like Susan trying to stab people with scissors. The Doctor accuses Ian and Barbara of sabotaging the TARDIS. The Doctor eventually finds out that there is a broken spring in the fast return switch, and it was stuck down and sending them further back in time. The weird things that were happening was the TARDIS trying to warn them before the ship was destroyed. At the end of the story, the first Doctor has a nice moment with Barbara, where he apologizes for accusing her and Ian, and this is where he starts to become nicer and care about them. I really like this story, and it's my favorite out of the first 3. It's a really good story that's short and interesting. After that, we got Marco Polo, which is the first missing story. It's 7 parts and all 7 are missing. It's a pure historical, which means it takes place in the past, and there are no futuristic things other than the TARDIS, the Doctor, and the companions. I love pure historicals, and this is a really good one even though it's missing. So, the TARDIS lands on Earth in the 13th century, and they meet Marco Polo and his caravan, and they are heading to Kublai Khan. Marco Polo wants to give Kublai Khan the TARDIS, and we see them travel across the Gobi Desert. I like all of the characters in this. I like Marco Polo and Ping Cho, and I think Tagana is a good villain. Marco Polo narrates over the story, and we see a map when they travel. I really like these narrations, and that it's unique to this story. Also, the sets and costumes look really good from the pictures we see. This is a really good story. It doesn't feel too long even though it's 7 episodes, and I wish it wasn't missing. Next is The Keys of Marinus, which is 6 episodes, and each episode takes place in a different setting. The TARDIS lands on the planet Marinus, and they are forced to get keys for a machine called the Conscience of Marinus. The keys are all in different places, and they use travel dials to get to each place. I like the different places they go to. It's interesting, and makes it more fun than it just being in one place. The Vord are the main villains of the story, and they are interesting, and I don't hate the design. There are some cool concepts in this story, like the hypnosis stuff with them seeing that everything looks nice, but it's all dirty stuff, and the trial with Ian is cool. So overall, this is a nice scavenger hunt type story, and I like it. Next is the Aztecs, which is another great pure historical, and it's only 4 episodes. The TARDIS arrives in 15th century Mexico, where the Aztecs are. Barbara gets mistaken for a goddess and wants to change history, because of all the sacrifices and death that is happening there. But the Doctor says that they should never interfere and change history. The Doctor's line, "You can't rewrite history, not one line," is a classic line and a really good moment. There's a funny part where the Doctor accidentally gets married by drinking cocoa, and a cool fight between Ian and Ixta. This is a great classic story and has some iconic moments. After that is the Sensorites, which is 6 episodes and might be one of the weaker stories of the season, but I still like it. They arrive in the TARDIS on a spaceship, and the crew are suffering from telepathic interference from the Sensorites, but they are just defending themselves, and the Doctor tries to cure an illness that the Sensorites are having. I like the Sensorites. They are kind of similar to the Ood, and the 10th Doctor even mentions the Sensphere in an episode. I like the scene where the Doctor is trying to find a cure so he can save the Sensorites and even Ian, who becomes ill. It's shown that Susan has some telepathic abilities with the Sensorites, but we don't see much more of this in other stories. I like the Doctor's line of, "It all started as a mild curiosity in a junkyard. Now it's turned into quite a great spirit of adventure, don't you think?" They also mention all of the adventures that they've had. I just really love that moment. It shows how they've changed and grown with each other, and this is another good story that has a lot of good moments. And last is another pure historical, The Reign of Terror. It's 6 episodes and 2 are missing. They arrive near Paris in 1794, and there's not too much I have to say about this one. I like when the Doctor disguises himself. The outfit he wears is interesting and cool looking. I really like this story, as it is another great pure historical, and it's a good story to end the season. In my opinion, this season is the most consistent First Doctor season, and every story in this season is good. But now, I'm going to quickly rank every story in this season. Number 8 is the Daleks. A good introduction to the Daleks, but I enjoyed it the least. Number 7 is the Sensorites. Had a lot of good moments, but was boring at some parts. Number 6 is the Keys of Marinus. I like the different settings for each episode, and it had some good ideas. Number 5 is An Unearthly Child. The first episode is a good introduction to the series, but slows down for the 3 episodes after. Number 4 is The Reign of Terror, least favorite pure historical of this season, but still a good one. Number 3 is The Edge of Destruction, a good, short, interesting story with good character development. Number 2 is Marco Polo. Even though it's missing, it's still good and enjoyable to watch. Number 1 is The Aztecs. It's a classic. I love pure historicals, and this one is the best of this season. So, that is my review of Season 1 of Classic Doctor Who. It's a good start for Doctor Who, and you can see why it's lasted so long. If you enjoyed this video, you could like and subscribe, and be sure to check out my other videos. See you next time. Goodbye.